I was hoping Simon wouldn't be here because I put this PowerPoint together at 5:15 a.m. yesterday morning at home, 5:15 a.m. yesterday morning at home, and I didn't have the CEPS template PowerPoint. So I'll probably be disciplined on Monday morning for that. But I did find a logo that I put in, which might help. Anyway, this is the culmination of 4 years of hard work for me, which might seem strange after I present the results, but let's see if this works. Oh, what happened? Went too far. Okay. It's just a literature review. I don't know if it's acceptable to present literature reviews at conferences, but I got away with it so far. I think the findings are important and haven't been put together before. The focus is, as the title suggests, on what people want from the police complaints systems that we have and what they experience from those systems, and if there's any way to improve them, because before going into this review, the indicators that were available to me suggested that it was a fairly unhappy place to be generally. My interest was with the experiences of participants in the complaints system, as well as stakeholder views on which agency they would prefer to investigate and adjudicate complaints. There are a number of different stakeholder groups, but I focused on complainants and the police as participants, and then also the public as, just having a general stake in police complaint systems. In a democracy, of course, we're all potentially complainants against the police. So, just very quickly, because again, I think most people probably know this sort of material in this forum. We know that civilian oversight has developed in different forms in different places. It's really taken off in the last 20 to 30 years. Some oversight agencies simply do paper-based reviews of police investigations and usually whinge about them and try to get changes made. They have really little or no capacity to overturn those changes or to actually investigate complaints themselves. Others are more sophisticated and will have a discretion to investigate more serious complaints. The New South Wales Police Integrity Commission deals, as we heard this morning, deals with more serious complaints. Others, like the one in Queensland where I am, they have much more of a discretion. There's only one agency that I'm aware of in the world that actually deals with, on paper at least, all, but certainly a very large majority of complaints against police itself by investigators who are, the large majority of whom are not police. They have some ex-police, and that's the Police Ombudsman for Northern Ireland. So at least we have one agency which we can say is, I think, genuinely external in its processes and actually has a significant adjudicative role as well. So at least we have something to compare with the others. In between, we have quite a spectrum of agencies. These have developed because of the well-known tendency for police, as in any organisation, to protect its own and to bury complaints or dismiss complaints. And we know that a lot of civil liberties organisations have repeatedly complained about this tendency, and we know that a large number of judicial inquiries and government reviews have identified this as a major problem. So typically a major judicial inquiry, a major finding will be a lot of these problems that have been identified in this inquiry could have been prevented if police had properly investigated complaints earlier on. Therefore, one of the reforms is the creation of an oversight agency to try to check the work, monitor the work, and pressure the police to be more effective in that area, and perhaps carry out some investigations itself. So there's an ongoing debate about this. I guess it's one of those eternal debates. So there's a lobby that says only police can investigate police because only police have the investigative skills and really understand the nature of policing and can relate to police and get police to come forward with evidence and that sort of thing. And then there's another group that says even if police can do a good job, there's an automatic suspicion of police investigating police, just as there's an automatic suspicion of academics investigating academics or any group. And so it's going to be a low trust system where you have internal processes like this. And there are some associated arguments about, investigations, for example, not being a monopoly of the police, but a generic skill that agencies can develop or import from other sectors, the private inquiry sector, for example. So what I wanted to do was to follow up on this issue and search for every primarily quantitative survey that I could find of these three groups, the public complainants and the police themselves, about their experiences of these systems and what their preferred approach was. And these surveys, many of which I had to throw away because of poor method or poor reporting of results, the ones I were able to identify, generally they come up with some questions about what was your overall experience, what was your experience of the process, and what was your experience of the outcome. Usually there's a question related to satisfaction. So I've kind of tried to break it down to satisfaction about process, outcome and overall. And then the other thing I did was create three types of oversight systems. Police-dominated ones, which are the majority, where police do almost all the investigations themselves and make decisions about discipline with a little bit of oversight. More mixed systems in between, and then independent systems, of which there's really only one, the Police Ombudsman for Northern Ireland. So let's look at the results very quickly in very abbreviated summary form. So for complainants, there's a picture of a potential complainant. I found 27 surveys that asked complainants about their experiences in police-dominated systems. The very large majority of respondents in all these surveys are extremely unhappy about every aspect of their process with police-dominated systems. 80–90% are unhappy, very low. Some are uncertain, very low satisfaction rates, 5–7% if you're lucky. If you look at mixed systems, the results are essentially the same, with the added problem of feeling betrayed by the oversight agency when they flick the complaint back to the police department instead of investigating it themselves. If you look at the Police Ombudsman for Northern Ireland, I don't know where I'm supposed to be pointing this thing to get it to work. Just into space. Okay. 10 surveys that would basically, it's an annual survey that they do in Northern Ireland. Most satisfied. So we break it down by process, outcome and overall. The interesting thing about the complainant surveys in Northern Ireland is that the majority of complainants are not satisfied. Only about 40% are satisfied. But a large majority of complainants, around 70% on average, are satisfied with the outcome, and about 60% are satisfied overall. So although they don't get the result they want, they still think that they've treated fairly well, and they like the fact that the complaint was investigated by an independent body with no ties to the police. Let's look at the police experience. That's just a random picture of police that I grabbed off the internet in a hurry. Doesn't mean anything, it's not saying anything. I found, 7 surveys of police who had had a complaint made against them and that had been processed in a police-dominated system. They're kind of generally unhappy as well, like 40% satisfied, 40% dissatisfied. So perhaps not as one might predict. 5 in mixed systems with some sort of oversight. They appeared to be slightly happier, although highly variable as well. So these are from, say, Israel, places in the United States, Australia, that kind of thing, from all around the globe. Surprisingly, perhaps in the Northern Ireland, police who have their complaint investigated by the Ombudsman end up quite satisfied, probably because the complaint's still not substantiated because, you know, of all the problems we know about with evidence. So they're perhaps not, as one would predict, you know, angry and feel victimised by an independent agency. Now, if we look at views on best agency to investigate complaints, so usually with these surveys, they say they'll ask complainants and police, what was your experience of the investigation, and then which agency would you have preferred to have deal with it, or what do you think about, say, independent or external investigations of complaints generally? And the public opinion surveys usually ask a similar question: which do you think is the best agency to investigate police? Police themselves, an independent agency. Some of them say any complaints, some of them say serious complaints. So there's a little bit of variation there. Some potential complainants there in that picture. So I found 12 public opinion surveys on this topic, and typically around 70 to 90%, around 80% of respondents will give an affirmative response to a statement. You know, complaints against police should be investigated independently, or they will say an external agency when they're asked, who do you think should investigate complaints? Now, there's some variation with those results in terms of the fact that some of them just ask serious complaints, whatever they are, but again, it's a similar result. The Queensland CMC does a series of public opinion surveys where they actually break the results down by seriousness of complaints. So they give 3 types of complaints with varying seriousness. And for the lower level one about rudeness, most respondents say police can investigate that. But for the others, a bribe and for an assault, they want an external agency. Complainants predictably strongly want, you know, they say quite clearly, the large majority want their complaint investigated independently. Police, as you would expect, tend to prefer internal, but with some of the questions that are asked, they do, I guess, slightly begrudgingly admit that it's better for public confidence, it's a better look if complaints are investigated independently. So they recognise some value in that. So just to look at the implications very quickly, I think if we take a more democratic approach to designing police complaints and discipline systems, without totally being slaves to public opinion, I think there is capacity to reconcile these interests in some ways. That would require, however, a much greater role for external agencies in the investigation of complaints, and there are different ways you can organise that, by scales of seriousness, perhaps by negotiating with the parties more about how they want their complaint processed. Now, I haven't mentioned this, but within these surveys, I'll just take 30 seconds. They usually ask, there are other surveys about informal resolution processes and mediation, that sort of thing. Complainants really want that. Not all of them, but a lot of them want that. Police aren't keen, but they'll go along with it, and when they experience it, they often think, oh, it's not too bad. So there's a lot more scope than is presently practiced in a lot of systems for informal resolution, although as we know from this morning, that's kind of the trend, that's the direction towards a restorative response to complaints. There's some people engaged in mediation. One of them is a police officer. So as I said, a possible approach is a negotiated approach. Now, if we were to put that into practice, at the moment it can't be done. More independent investigations, more mediation can't be done because we don't have the infrastructure. The external agencies we have in countries like Australia are bunkered down in capital cities in high-rise buildings. So one way to deal with that issue is to create public sector integrity agencies that deal with police and corrections and politicians and the public service, and regionalise those agencies so that they've got a presence across the country. They can deal much more on a face-to-face basis with cases and with mediation, that kind of thing. And I'll stop there. Thank you.